Hi everybody, welcome back. Now in a recent video I showed how to care for your battery over the winter months, and the video's been very well received, but there's been a few comments on that video asking for more of a description and more insight on how to use one of these, a multimeter. And I thought that's an excellent topic to cover off and specifically show you what you can use a multimeter for around the caravan. So in this video I'm going to show you what a multimeter can actually do, how we can use it on things around the caravan, some specific tasks that are good for multimeters, and also give you some help and advice on purchasing one of them. So first of all, let's go into what a multimeter actually is. So a multimeter is a meter and it has multiple functions to it. Well, this one, for example, you can measure the voltage, you can measure current, you can measure resistance, you can do continuity, you can even check the temperature, the frequency, lots of other things as well. They're multi-purpose meters. It captures a lot of test equipment and a lot of instruments, puts it all together in a handy little package. Now, there are two types of multimeter available on the market. There are digital types like this one, and there are analog types like this one. Now, the difference between the two are literally how it displays the information to you. This being a digital one, it's going to put numbers on the display. I hope you can see that one. And an analog meter moves a needle across a meter. Now, the argument to which one is best is another topic and not really for this channel. Instead, I'm going to focus on a digital meter today. And first things first, we're going to measure the voltage on the battery. Okay, so before we go and start playing around with voltages, let's make sure we've got the meter set up correctly. So as you can see, we've got a meter here and we've got a couple of leads which we need to plug into the meter. Now, it's important that we plug the leads into the correct sockets on the meter. So the first one we're going to plug in is the black lead, the negative. And this one goes into what's known as common. Now, every meter will have a common, and it just simply plugs in like so. Now, you'll notice that we have A and a small m and an A and a V and an omega sign and a H and a Z. So what do these actually mean? Well, the A measures current, so it's an ammeter. The small m and the A is milliamps, so for small amounts of current. And over here we've got V, the omega is for resistance, and the H and the Z is for frequency. So what we can do is we plug this one here over into this socket here, because we're going to be measuring the voltage of a battery. So the second thing we need to do is move the meter onto the volt range. So let it settle down for a minute. We can see it's on auto, it's on DC, and that means we're ready to go and put our terminals onto a battery. Right then, so here we go, we're next to the battery. I've pulled the battery out of the caravan so I can get to the terminals, and our meter is set up on the volt range, and all we need to do now is apply the probes to the battery. So using the black probe, we're going to stick it on the negative terminal of the battery, and using the red probe, we're going to stick it on the positive terminal of the battery, and we're going to read the voltage, and as you can see it says 13.44 volts. And as we know from our battery care video, we know that this battery is nicely charged up. And there we go, that's how we measure the battery voltage. But it's not that straightforward for us because we've got a solar panel plugged onto our battery. So what am I actually measuring? Am I measuring the voltage in the battery, or am I measuring the voltage from the solar panel? Well, there's a number of things we can do to check the solar panel and the battery in isolation. And there's also a way to find out how much power the solar panel is giving our battery as well. Now, to do all this, I'm going to nip inside, I'm going to get a screwdriver, and we're going to start looking at the back of our solar panel. So let's nip inside right now. Right, so we're now sat inside the caravan and I'm sat behind our solar panel here. We've got our control unit here for our solar panel, and I've also got a handy little plug here, and I hope you can see that I can disconnect the solar panel away from the battery. What that's going to do is allow me to check the battery voltage in isolation without the panel plugged in, and also check the panel voltage as well when it's not connected to the battery. Now, there's another check we're going to do. We're going to reconfigure our meter in a moment, and we're going to check to see how much current the panel is supplying the battery. Now, that's important because we can then work out, for a very simple calculation, how much power the panel is producing in charging our battery. Now, I'll come on to that in a moment. The first thing I need to do though is disconnect our solar panel from our battery. This is our battery end. So what I can do here now is I've got the meter sat here configured on the volt range, and I can simply plug in my probes into our plug here and read the voltage straight away. And as you can see here, our battery is reading 13.3231 volts. Let me put that up there so you can see that one. And that's our battery end there. Now when we measure our panel, we're going to see something a little bit strange, especially on this a fairly sunny day. And let's do that right now and I'll show you what I mean. So our solar panels here have got a solar charge controller. This is the electronics which works out what needs to go where. Now when I connect my multimeter onto the battery terminals here, the positive goes there, the negative goes there, you can see that we've got ourselves a reading of 15 volts. 15.1, 15.5, and as the sun will come out as well, that will go up and up and up. Now you might be asking yourself, why is that so high? Why have I got such a strange voltage reading off the panel? Well, it's a very simple explanation. When the panel is disconnected from the battery, the float voltage of the panel will go up because it's not under load. There's nothing pulling any power out of the panel. So it'll just sit there and steadily increase the voltage. As soon as we put something in it and power is being pulled from this controller, the voltage reduces down to respectable amounts, anywhere between 12 and 13.5 volts. Some panels even go up to 14 volts, but that's quite rare. So now we know that the panel is indeed creating voltage. Let's see how much current is being produced from the panel and put into the battery. And that way we can calculate how much power the panel is actually producing for our battery today. So there's a very simple thing we need to do first of all. We need to reconfigure our multimeter in order to do this. So our multimeter at the moment is set on the volt range and we've got our probes plugged into the correct sockets. Now what we need to do, however, is we need to check to see how much current the panel is producing. So to do that, we're going to move our meter all the way around to the A sign, which is A for amps, and that's the current. And we need to move our probe from the V, ohms and hertz sign, and we move it over to the amp sign. Now your meter may have slightly different labels, but that's the same process that you'll be achieving there. Now you can probably still see that we've got error messages on here, and that's because we're still disconnected from our battery. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to disconnect one terminal that normally would go to the battery. And all I'm going to do is pull that out like so. Now another thing I'm going to do to make my life simpler for myself is I'm going to stick my positive probe into the screw terminal and I'm going to tighten this terminal up, and you'll see why in a moment. Now the other thing I need to do now is I just need to reconnect our battery to our plug. And then what we have here is we've got a terminal, a bare terminal here, and we have my other probe. Now when I connect these two together, it's behaving a bit like a switch, and as soon as I connect these two together, the current is going to go through here, this red probe, through the meter and through the black probe and back down to the battery. And then in a moment we'll be able to read what's going on. So let's connect the black probe and hold it on there like so, nice and tight. And as you can see, the error message has gone out now on the controller. So with the circuit now connected, you can see that in actual fact the panel is giving 0.152 of an amps to the battery, which basically means we're supplying 150 or 160 milliamps to the battery. Now that's down to a couple of reasons. First of all, the battery is fully charged, so it doesn't need to supply any current. And also it's a bit of a grey day as well. But as you can see, as the sun's coming out, you can see the current is going up and up. You never know, we might get to 200. There we go. So we've got 200 milliamps going to the battery. Now that doesn't mean much, does it? So what we can do is we can do a simple calculation in a moment and work out exactly how much power the panel is providing. So what we'll do is we'll use an average number here. We'll use 0.2 of an amp, which is 200 milliamps, and we'll do a calculation based upon that. We want to work out the power, which is measured in watts, and that is equal to the voltage times the current. So 12 volts times 0.2 amps gives us 2.4 watts. Now if the battery was slightly discharged, let's say for example we were using it and if it was a lot sunnier, I'd expect those figures to be a lot higher. But there we go, we've just proven mathematically and with our equipment of what the panel and what the battery are actually doing right now. So that's two very useful things that we can use our multimeter for around the caravan. But there are a few other things as well which may not be so obvious for us to check. Now, first of all, we've got a continuity checker, which allows us to check to see whether things like fuses or bulbs or wires are actually still working. Let me show you how we can use that right now. Okay, so this one is really straightforward, and in actual fact, we don't need to use the display for this one. Depending on the meter, it may make a sound, it may not. So what we need to do is we need to make sure our probes are in the correct sockets here. Put our meter around to this audio sign here. Press the function button there so we can actually hear something. And very simply, if I put the two probes together, you can see that we've got continuity. So what we can do with that knowledge is we can check things like fuses. So by holding one side of the fuse like so, I can press my meter onto the other side and I can prove that that fuse is in good condition. And that's useful because sometimes when the fuse blows, it may look okay, but actually it's probably blown. Now the second thing I can do is I can check bulbs. If I do it so you can actually see it, that's fine, and that's fine. So I can tell that that bulb there, which has got two filaments in it, that bulb is absolutely fine. Now there are other things that you can check with a continuity checker, let's say cables for example, and that's absolutely perfect, especially if you've got exposed cables outside. I used my meter some time ago when I was repairing the steady alarm on the caravan. Being able to use this meter to prove that the cable was in fact corroded and wasn't supplying any of the current, and it saved me a lot of time, and I was able to replace the cable no problems at all. So finally, let's give you the health warning. Let's give you the word of warning. They are capable of measuring the mains voltage as well. You're able to measure the mains current and the mains voltage, and you can do a lot more things besides as well. But would I recommend you do that? No, I wouldn't. Don't fiddle around with mains voltage unless you are qualified and you know what you're about to do. Mains voltage will kill you. If you fiddle around with it and you don't know what you're doing, it will kill you. And in general, if you're not confident using a meter at all, then just don't do it. There are people out there who are qualified and very willing and very capable of doing things for you around the caravan. So call a mobile service engineer or even call into your local dealer who will be able to check out any problems that you have. But for checking things like the state of the battery, for checking to see whether things are connected, fuses, etc., that's no harm at all, and it's something that I would recommend you carry around with you. So I hope this video is of use for you today. I hope it's answered a lot of questions and made it a little bit clearer on how to use a meter around the caravan. Now down below I've put a link to a couple of models which I think are superb meters, and I've also been able to find my meter. Even though I've had this one for a number of years now, this meter is listed down below as well. So there we go guys, that's it for this week. Any comments or any questions, feel free to put them down below. Thanks for watching and I'll see you next week. Take care now, bye bye.